whatever you want.
Yeah. Because I know I made a lot of changes to them. So good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, my name is Danielle Lane. I'm a fertility physician in the San Francisco Bay Area. My company is called Lane Fertility Institute, and I'm super excited to partner with Patriot Conceptions because I think they really offer a fantastic surrogacy program, and that's something that I'm always looking for as a physician as I think about how I can best help our patients be successful with their care. So the term third-party reproduction really implies that someone other than you and or your partner is involved in your fertility journey. And this can be a gestational surrogate or a carrier. It can be an egg donor or donor eggs, a sperm donor or frozen donor sperm. And so I think one of the things that's important to know just right off the top is if we're talking about third-party reproduction, there are some guidelines that the FDA puts on us and that really the American Society of Reproductive Medicine here in the U.S. puts on us. And so when Bai and I are talking about some of the different processes that we have to go through, just keep in mind that some of them are because we think that it's best care for our patients and clients, and some of it is because there are guidelines that really do mandate that this is the standard of care. Okay, so the surrogacy journey is going to require, obviously, the help of a very special individual. We talk about that person as being the gestational carrier or the surrogate. And in addition, you're going to need help from a team of other people. Obviously, you will need a fertility doctor of some sort. Typically, in the United States, that person is called a reproductive endocrinology or infertility specialist. And so that means they've done 4 years of obstetrics and gynecology training and 3 years of then a reproductive endocrinology and infertility training before they start doing the work that, for example, I do. In addition, you need a surrogacy agency, and it is definitely the case that we do see surrogate matches that don't involve an agency, but I can't stress enough how important it is to partner with a surrogacy agency. There are just so many pieces of this puzzle that are critically important and that will get overlooked. Your doctor is not your surrogacy agency. It doesn't mean we don't know what should happen. It means that our job is to do the medical care that you need, and certainly a lot of other support. But the surrogacy agency is critically important for making sure the surrogate knows what she's doing every step of the way, that you understand what to anticipate every step of the way. And just, I think, to keep in mind that, as fertility specialists, we are involved in your care through about the first 10 weeks, after which your care gets transitioned to an obstetrician gynecologist. And so if there's no agency to help facilitate those changes, it can be very tricky. Reproductive attorneys are necessary because there needs to be a legal agreement between you and the surrogate to make sure everybody's clear on who the intended parents are and who the gestational surrogate is. And a mental health professional is going to be required in almost every case because, again, there are guidelines that that require us to make sure that both you and the surrogate understand some of the emotional obstacles that could occur during this process. And then, as I mentioned, an obstetrician gynecologist will be necessary to deliver your baby. Okay, we talked about this, but again, what is gestational surrogacy? It's an arrangement in which a woman intends and agrees to become pregnant for and to carry a pregnancy for someone else, otherwise known as the intended parents. And it is the intended parents who will become the child's legal and natural parents after birth. So, I often get asked, or actually some of my patients often ask me if they need a surrogate. And, I think there's a very specific subset of people that are going to require a gestational surrogate. There are other people who choose to use a gestational surrogate, but here are the criteria for the people who really do require one. One, heterosexual couples who have struggled with infertility and might have been diagnosed with things such as implantation, struggles or recurrent miscarriage. Those are people who will need a gestational surrogate, okay? Women who are unable to carry a child due to medical diagnosis or age. So we generally believe that after about the age of 49 or 50 that we oughtn't be putting embryos into people for their own general health. And so therefore, if you are over that age and are thinking about growing your family, then a gestational surrogate would be recommended. There are certain medical disorders. There are cardiac disorders. There are people that have back issues that they really can't carry on additional weight. I mean, I could go through a list, but if you are not in a medically fit shape to carry a pregnancy, then a gestational surrogate is appropriate. In the case of same-sex couples, actually there will always be a gestational surrogate involved. If it's a same-sex female couple, the Federal Drug Administration considers the partner that is carrying the embryos of another partner to be a surrogate, and you may consider that person to be your partner and your wife, and legally they are, but in the eyes of the FDA, they are a surrogacy case. And the same-sex male couples, will not have a uterus, and therefore will need to make use of a gestational surrogate who can assist them with carrying pregnancy. And I think it's also important just to point out right here that this last section is one of those things that kind of makes us all cringe. The terminology that gets used by the FDA that we are required and mandated to respond to is really awkward. It's very not in line with how I live in a progressive place like San Francisco. And so, please know that we struggle with some of the assumptions that get made on the behalf of the FDA as well as our patients. So we understand that perspective as well. Surrogacy's legality. So one of the reasons why we see so much surrogacy in the U.S. is because in most states it actually is legal, and that's unique. It is unique that in the United States any person can require or request the use of a gestational surrogate, regardless of their sexual orientation, regardless of their marital status, regardless of any other social constraints. And so in the U.S., minus the states of Michigan and New York, and I believe I heard that New York was going to update that policy in 2021, but currently those are the two states where you cannot do gestational surrogacy. Even in gestationally surrogate friendly countries outside the U.S. and within the U.S., there can be variations in how the policy is enacted region to region, state to state. So it's important to sort of be very familiar, not just with the overarching country laws, but with the local laws where you or your surrogate will be located. California, which is where Land Fertility Institute and Patriot Conceptions are located, is one of the most surrogacy-friendly states globally, really, and has many advantages towards selecting surrogates and for the entire process. We have some of the strongest laws for intended parenthood that protect the intended parent's rights, and therefore a lot of people worldwide come to the U.S. and specifically to California for the purpose of gestational surrogacy. Okay, let's see. So the surrogacy process, do you want to take this one, by?
Sure, yeah, I can briefly talk about, Dr. Lang covered really a lot about surrogacy in terms of, legality. And I think later on we're going to get to the IVF part. I'm pretty sure some of the prospective parents would wonder, what the IVF process is like. Yeah, so I like to briefly introduce, the surrogacy process to everybody. So at Patriot Conceptions, and normally before you even get to this surrogacy process, that you would go to IVF clinic, such as Land Fertility, to get yourself screened and do, and get your, sperm and egg retrieval, and have your embryos ready. Then you will go to the a process to select, meet, and match with a surrogate. So with us, normally you would have an initial consultation with one of our specialists, where he or she will lay out all the pros and cons, the different routes, the financing options, with in that regard. And we have a pretty good surrogate pool for you to choose different candidates by different criteria, like their age, their locations, their religious belief. It's all available online. And here I'm going to do a quick call to action. So everybody, if you look at the center of your screen, click on that link, learn more. You will be redirected to our surrogate profile page, and where you can sign up and set up appointment with one of our surrogates. After you match with a surrogate, this is one of the first few steps. And then you will go to, let's say, if the parents you have your embryo stored at Land Fertility, your surrogates will go to Dr. Lang's clinic and do her medical screening. And at the same time, there will be a psychological evaluation. Normally, you have your choice to choose, one of the many psychologists. Normally, what they would do, they would do a personality inventory test, and then we have a Zoom interview. Nor since it's COVID-19, especially during this period of time, they will do a Zoom interview, um, to ask all different kind of questions to figure out if the surrogate is mentally ready for for a surrogacy journey. If she has a partner or boyfriend, girlfriend, um, her partner is also required to participate in this process. And also in regards to the medical screening process, her partner will be required to go to that medical appointment with her, or they live in, I don't know, Dr. Lan. So normally when we have an out of state surrogate, her husband normally just they would just send a lab order where he lives to, so he can just do the simple blood work. Is that the same case with you?
Yes, so we screen the surrogate in person, and we send a lab order out for the partner to be screened. And just to jump in quickly, I mean, that's really important because this is not a donor cycle. This is a surrogacy cycle. This baby is going to be with both the surrogate and their partner for the next 10 months. And so making sure that we understand the medical risks that might be involved in the partner, both from, a infectious disease and and sort of a psychological evaluation perspective are really, truly important.
Absolutely, yeah. So after you and your partner get thoroughly screened, by IVF doctors and evaluated by a psychologist, we will go through the legal process. And especially when one of the six criteria where your surrogacy needs to be drafted is where your IVF clinic is at. So in majority of the cases, you'll be able to do your surrogacy contract in the state of California. But if you when it comes to establishing your parentage, it depends on where the surrogate residing, which state she residing. Some's a pre-birth order, some are post-birth. Depends on the states. So normally it takes about 2 to 6 weeks because the attorney will help you draft up your surrogacy contract, and after you finalize the first draft, it will be sent over to another independent attorney. He or she will review the contract with the surrogate candidate, and once you guys reach agreement, you're both gonna get the document notarized and signed. Then IVF clinic will then post, once they get the legal clearance letter, they will then start a FET calendar for your candidates. Then that process takes about anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks. Depends on how much time you will need to negotiate and to work out the differences. And once the FET calendar is posted, the surrogate is going to follow the medication and all the lab test appointments strictly until the transfer day. And even 1 to 2 months after the transfer date, there's still the first 10 weeks of her, we call it, she'll be closely monitored by the IVF clinics. And after that first 10 weeks, normally 10 weeks, we call it, we use a term called IVF graduation, meaning, she completed all her tasks with the IVF clinic. Then she'll go back to a normal OBGYN doctor until she delivers the baby. Okay, let's see what's next.
So one of the things I want to point out on that slide before we leave it too far is that part of the process of getting ready for a transfer is that before we actually put an embryo into a surrogate, we want to know that that OBGYN has been identified and is ready and has agreed to take on a pregnancy. I will say that I've certainly seen some scenarios where the surrogacy agencies, not this surrogacy agency, Patriot Conceptions has not done this, have not lined up that OBGYN in advance, and now person who's ready to graduate from our office, and they're scrambling to find somebody who's going to take on the case and willing to, like, you know, work with that insurance, and all of that stuff needs to be done up front. I mean, this is definitely one of those scenarios where you cannot over plan and over detail the work that needs to be done. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And normally, even before we get to that step, in the legal contract, the attorney, the parents are, in the contract they sign, they need to, they need to purchase, we made it very clear they need to purchase the insurance ahead of time,
Right.
unless you choose cash pay. So we would already know, what type of insurance network she will fall under. Like Dr. Lang pointed out, if it, working with one of the benefits of working with a responsible agency is that they will figure out with which doctors, or even the hospital they eventually have to go to, beforehand, before she even graduated the IVF. Yes.
Right. And we ask them to be cleared by that obstetrician with a letter in the chart as a part of the pre-workup for that legal process. So the idea is just that everything should be in place so that by the time the pregnancy begins, it's truly seamless, and you're just enjoying, your surrogate being pregnant. Sorry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Next slide. Okay. Okay. Then we're getting to the details how to make make appointment with the agency. Pretty much. We're fairly easygoing, and we're very easygoing. Once you approach, or you can call in to talk to one of our client relations. He'll work through all the process. I think we already go through those process in the previous slides. And I want to talk briefly about the requirements for becoming a surrogate, especially with us. They need to have it delivered. They first of all, they have to already been a mom already, so have it deliver one or more children. And our ideal candidates that we also require that she raised, herself need to raise at least one child in the past to pretty much show her responsibility, and not currently receiving any federal or state financial assistance. Well, it's more case by case. Sometimes we do have some of the good-hearted women who wanting to help. Just prior to signing the surrogacy contract, we ask them to get off the assistance if there's any. No history of arrest or substance abuse or any sort of stuff. Beyond a petty misdemeanor. This is we hired a private investigator to investigate her criminal record, federal, state, county level, very intensively. A quick soft pull on on your personal credit to make sure you don't have any outstanding financial debt, and also willing to undergo a psychological evaluation, and be very cooperative is very important, because we don't want a bunch of no-shows at the psychological or medical screening. Between the age of 21 to 38, non-drug user, non-smoker, living in a non-smoking home, because your partner will do a blood test, and one of the tests that we the doctor normally do is to detect if there's any nicotine in his or her blood. So, and we, in addition to New York, Michigan, and by the way, Dr. Len already pointed out, it's good news for New York starting next February.
February.
Yeah, February 1st, they will legalize surrogacy in New York. But currently, Louisiana, it's all case by case, and the LGBT doesn't work there. So we, as an agency, we exclude the candidates from Louisiana and Nebraska too. We rarely see any surrogacy cases done in Nebraska, and the few one that we work with is really, really difficult to work with Nebraska judicial branch. So that's why we in addition to New York and Michigan, and New York is not going to be on the list next year, we also exclude Louisiana and Nebraska. Also own a vehicle, and to go to your appointment is very important. So you need to have a valid driver license and a functional vehicle. And matching process. Matching process really there's not one fits for all situation in surrogacy matching. There's too many factors. So it's a good step. It's a good first step by talking to our client relation on what kind of surrogate what kind of a quality that you looking for in a surrogate candidates. Like for example, their religious belief. We have some Jewish intended parents and Christian intended parents in the past that they want somebody to have the same religious faith, and so they can it's easier for them to communicate. We've seen in the past that we have a Christian couple that work with a Christian surrogate that they um, that they read the Holy Scripture, on a daily basis. So those are kind of things that will help to nurture your long-term, mid-term relationship, especially if you decide that you want to have a really close relationship with your surrogate. Moving forward, it's very important to make sure that every little detail, matches. So after you select your ideal candidate and have the match interview, either in person or via Zoom call, you decide to commit to each other. Then you will go through all the evaluation and the legal process that we talked about in the previous slides. Matching with the surrogate. Okay, we already and medical and for the medical cycle and Dr. Lane, is there anything that you like to supplement, like for a surrogate and her partner? I know you already did it, but is there any specific detail?
No, I mean, I think that one of the things I just want to maybe if I just jump to some of these questions that are here, that'll help with the medical clearance part. So first of all, the reason that we require that people have had a baby before is not just for their responsibility, but also because we want to know that their uterus works, and we want to know that they've had a healthy pregnancy, right? Pregnancy is something that your body will not have gone through the first time, and we cannot predict how your body will respond to it. But what we can do is use a prior pregnancy as a predictor of a future outcome. And so that's a number one reason why we want people to have had a pregnancy before. Somebody asked how many pregnancies are allowed. The American Society of Reproductive Medicine recommends that that 6 is the total number of pregnancies, and I would say that's even a little high. In terms of 3 C-sections, in terms of cesarean sections, 3 is the maximum that's allowed, and that comes with huge question and concern. So ideally, you want fewer pregnancies than that. Okay. And then somebody asked about, whether or not you can shorten steps 1 and 2, which have to do with the original meeting and and the matching process. I think that both Bai's team and my team work hard to make sure that we are not slowing down anyone's surrogacy process. I've had people match their surrogates within a week, but that means that you guys have to be, as a patient or client, have to be really ready to match somebody, flexible to get on the phone, flexible to meet with that person, flexible to work with the agency. I always tell people that, and I'm sure Bai can do the same, we can pivot very quickly. But what I generally find is that it's more difficult for our patients and for Bai, his clients, to pivot as quickly as it takes to do something very fast. And, this is a huge undertaking from an emotional and resource toll. And we just want to make sure you get it right the first time. I'd rather spend a little bit more time helping you match someone and I look through every profile with my patients. I want to make sure that's right the first time, because when it's not, it's a huge challenge to undo the mess.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Lam, what she mentions is it's very important that that you communicate, that we have an open communication between us, the doctor, agency doctor, the intended parent, and the surrogates, to avoid any misunderstanding in the future. And let's see what's next. What will be the next slides? Legal process. We already went through that. Getting pregnant, and also get pregnant. Dr. Lionel point out the importance of selecting your OBGYN, your maternity care provider, the OBGYN, and your hospital, because we seen in situations where some of the hospitals are harder to work with than the other one, because some of the hospitals especially in a state where surrogacy rarely happen, they probably never seen a surrogacy contract in the past. So to make sure that we communicate with the hospital beforehand. Make sure they understand all the legal paperwork, the legal process. It's very important. Even in the state of California, not very long ago, in Sacramento, one of the hospitals is really hard to work with. None of their social workers have seen a pre-birth court order, so they even question about the legality of that. Sorry, that paperwork. So yeah, so to make sure those are taken care of is very important. In vitro fertilization, I think that now this, Dr. Lang, this,
Sure. So, there is something called traditional surrogacy, in which the surrogate also provides the egg, and that is a very rare scenario that I don't think Bai nor I particularly are doing a lot of work in the space of, mainly because the legalities around that are very tricky, and the intended parents are not as well protected. Therefore, the only other way that gestational surrogacy works is if you do in vitro fertilization. And so when we're talking about in vitro fertilization, what we're talking about is taking an egg either from one of the female partners in a relationship, or from a donor egg, and the sperm from one of the male partners in the relationship, or a donor sperm, creating an embryo, and that embryo then going into our gestational surrogate that you have selected. And so the reason that that occurs is, one, because we just don't have another way of getting the embryo in there, and two, because it's incredibly successful from a statistical perspective. And so if we talk about what that process looks like, I'm going to skip this and go to the next slide. I'm going to come back to those by. The stimulation cycle looks like this. Your donor or your partner, whichever it is, will be undergoing hormone injections for about 8 to 12 days while getting ultrasounds to look at the growth of follicles, which contain eggs, from this smaller size to this larger size. Then undergoing an egg retrieval, where we use the same ultrasound with a needle attached to take out the eggs, and then go through the IVF process. And in doing that, we then fertilize the eggs through a process usually called ICSI, intracytoplasmic sperm injection. That's not required, but it is quite frequent. We culture these embryos out to the blastocyst stage, and then we actually biopsy the blastocyst, so that we have the ability to look and see which embryos are normal. Embryos are then frozen while we wait for those results to return, and frankly, while we wait for the surrogate to get ready. Traditionally, long ago, we used to do fresh transfers, and as soon as the embryo reached that day 3 or day 5 stage, the surrogate was ready to go too. Now we freeze those embryos and we place them back when the surrogate is ready. And so if you're doing what's known as embryo biopsy, which is, again, not required, but often a benefit for the couple in terms of efficiency, you can see that the top half of this report shows embryos that are either 46XX or 46XY, so those are genetically normal embryos. The bottom half are abnormal embryos, and those are ones that we wouldn't choose to transfer. And then finally, once the gestational surrogate is cleared to proceed, the embryo is being in place. She now takes medications to prep her uterus. She gets blood work and ultrasounds done. And upon the uterus being ready, we would then do an embryo transfer that looks like this. You can see the black area marked bladder, which shows us the uterus below it. The white line inside that uterus represents the catheter, and the embryo is placed 1 centimeter below the top of the uterine cavity. So that whole process of going from first injection to getting eggs, if you choose to get eggs that way, is about 2 weeks. There's also the option of purchasing frozen eggs, which can arrive the next day. The transfer process can range in how long it takes, anywhere from 2 weeks in some cases to 5 weeks, depending on the medication protocol that's been used. And let me see, pregnancy rates, if you're putting back a genetically normal blastocyst, are about 77 or 78% into the gestational surrogate. I can go back and touch on a couple of those other slides. I'll do that really quickly, and then I'll let you take over. If we go back just to a few of these, we talked about all of these steps in our quick review of IVF. I'm always happy to talk to people more about IVF, but I just want the focus of this to be on how surrogacy works. And if you are in need of an egg donors come in, a range of ways in 2020. You can use a fresh egg by taking an egg donor through the process of that stimulation process that I've mentioned, injections, ultrasounds, egg retrieval, and or, as I mentioned before, you can actually use a frozen donor egg. Sometimes people know their donor. It might be a sister or a cousin. Sometimes people are using an agency that is specifically looking for a donor for them or working through their clinic to help them find an anonymous donor. Those are all options and possibilities. So let me just get you back to where you were. Okay. Can intended parents know all the process going through on the surrogates and keeping track of these steps? Yes, the intended parents should know every step of every process that Vi and I are discussing. So in our office, when we work with a gestational surrogacy case, everything that would normally be reported out to the patient also gets reported out to the intended parents, whether that's the egg donor journey or the surrogates process. And I'm going to imagine, Vi, it's the same in your case as it relates to the legal and the psych, all the different hoops that people are going through during this process. Is that true?
Okay.
Vi, is that true for your side as well?
Yeah, I think that's my side, but we're approaching the end of it. It really is, it's a beauty and family to to help the individuals and family that's struggling from infertility, or for some LGBTQ plus communities and a single parent by choice. It's really it's bringing having a child is really I'm sorry, hold on. Yeah, it's a lifetime joy to have a child and to be able to do that. And let me see. Okay, we just did some adjustment to change the layout so we be able to see all the questions, because we're toward the end of it. So, and the cost of a surrogacy at Patriot Conception, we recently have a good promotion going on. So it's actually it's lower than the amount on the slides. So the surrogate, if you choose to use a surrogate, first-time surrogate, of course, well qualified with all medical records are screened. So right now it's somewhere around 90,000. So, and you'll be able to use our a good profile system, select the profile that you desire to meet, and then make appointments online. Legal fee, like I said, the breakdown of the surrogate costs is, it's the surrogate screening, including our agency fee. So somewhere around 30. Well, actually, we lowered that. So right now it's around 25. The legal fees consists of around $3,000 for the drafting of a legal contract, another 10, 1 grand to 1.5 for the review fee, and the rest of a $5K is about the pre-birth court order or in post-birth. Essentially the paperwork fees and the filing fees to establish your parentage at the states of your chosen. The surrogate benefit package, including her base compensation, her monthly allowance, her maternity clothing, and all different kind of stuff, is about $50K. That means that it's about $50K that goes to the surrogate compensation. And like I say, in California is higher than the rest of the country. If you're more cost constrained, there are many cheaper options available, like in the state rather than California. Surrogate insurance fee, that's another big contributing factor on how to lower your total bills of total cost of surrogacy. That open enrollment period come as an advantage, because it's generally a lot cheaper. And some states have a more flexible enrollment period, like California. This year, because of COVID, we were still able to do. We were still able to get people, the regular insurance in the month of August. But in the past, it only gets extended to February. And some states are really some states are really strict. Like you only able to have that window between November 1st to until December 15th, essentially 45 days. And that's the case for majority of the states. But in terms of insurance, if you cannot use a normal insurance, I think then you have to go the more expensive route, like Lloyd's of London. In that case, the cost of insurance, can exponentially shoot up, because there's no traditional insurance available to cover the cost. But some parents choose to do cash pay. There's advantages to it. If it's a normal healthy pregnancy, this actually will be cost less than purchasing specialty insurance like Lloyd's of London. But we would have advised against it, because if anything happened, the potential for you to receive a large bill would be, is very possible. Like, if there's any complication during the pregnancy, God forbid, if your newborn have to go to a NICU, that will blow up your bills very, very quickly.
And then
Finance it.
most fertility clinics will not work with a surrogacy arrangement that doesn't have an insured surrogate, because there's just too much liability for everybody involved if there's ever a complication. So, I mean, I would say that it will be difficult to find a reputable clinic that will accept a surrogacy arrangement that doesn't involve some form of insurance.
Absolutely, absolutely. And financing option, we want to talk about, we partner with a Personal Health Lending and Lightstream by SunTrust, so you could get up to like $100,000, and with a flexible term up to 84 months. Depends on the length of your term. You get more favorable rates at a shorter term. Of course, if you try to go all the way to 84, you're gonna have a higher rate. But there are many other options available. Our client relations are more than happy to talk to you about. Like, in my opinion, like cash out refinance. If your current mortgage have a much better and more favorable terms in terms of financing for your fertility and surrogacy journey. I think we're toward okay. This conclude our presentation. So we're gonna have a brief Q&A. So let's check. About let's check. The question that our guest left us.
Try to get the questions as we went through. There might be one or two that I missed, but I think I got them.
Okay. Can step 1 and 2 be shortened somehow? Like, if I feel like I just want to find a surrogate as quickly as possible. Okay, let me go back to that slides where it says step 1 and 2. Okay, step 1 and 2. That would be selection and matching.
I think you had some on your previous slide even earlier with the circles. Let me go back to that one. I think she was looking at this part right here where it said, there it is. No, one more.
Okay.
Here. Where'd it go? Hold on, there. Where it says 1 to 2 and then 3 to 4 weeks, you know what I mean? So that's like 6 weeks. But I mean, my experience is, I think we talked a little bit about it. I think the answer to that is it depends on how flexible you are with what you're looking for in your surrogate, right? So, most agencies will send out 1 or 2 profiles at a time, and then you'll want to go through that. You'll want to review that with your physician, make sure it's someone that the physician just at a high level is willing to clear. And, but also then make sure it's a good fit for you. So, I mean, sometimes you can find somebody who's a good fit the first person you talk to. But just know that it's not like an anonymous egg donation where you never meet them and, we're really truly interacting with that person on your behalf. I mean, you will have some interaction with this person and they are carrying your most precious commodity, which is your baby. So, I mean, I think that you can definitely do that more quickly. On our side, we've seen it happen. I'm sure you have too, but I just caution people to be careful, because the goal here is not necessarily quick. The goal here is get it right the first time.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why we don't advise that we would advise you to have a very detailed look at each and every one of the available options. And also, at the same time, the surrogates are looking at your profile too. So we want to make sure So pretty much that's why we put a 1 to 2 weeks. And of course, the chances are pretty good if you want to if you want to expedite it, and you want to you like it, and also one of the big factor on how to match, whether you can get matched very quickly is, what type of relationship you're looking for with a surrogate. Some doesn't want to, especially when it comes to celebrities. There are times they don't want to know the surrogate at all. And then surrogate doesn't, they don't, they don't want any intersection. There's no interaction with their surrogates. Of course, then you can pretty much pick any healthy women to help you out. But majority of the cases, parents do want to have a good relationship, long-term relationship with the surrogate. That's why you need to look at their profile carefully, to factor in all the different aspects. So yeah.
And it is a good point that you made there, Bai. You sort of flew by it, but it's really critically important for people to understand that this is a dual matching process. It's not just you selecting the surrogate. The surrogate actually has to agree to work with you as well. And so it isn't all a unilateral decision of the intended parents. And that's different than in much of the third-party work that happens with, for example, egg donors or sperm donors.
Okay, Jordan. So he come up with a question. Then, like, how many surrogate can intended parents base their choice on? Well, we have all our available surrogates, and at our agency we have all our available surrogates on the in the online system. So all you got to do. So I'm going to do the call to action again if you didn't get a chance to do it. So if you click on learn more, you go to our profile page. Of course, it requires a sign up for you to get access to all our profiles. So and our available surrogates are there, their location, their BMI, their marital status, all the detailed information is on there. So if you take a look, so really there's a many choice. I don't know, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I think we have really several dozens of them. Okay.
That's kind of nice and also a little bit unique. I mean, many agencies will give you one profile to look at and then another profile to look at. And it's really a great option to be able to look through all of these different surrogate profiles and get a sense of what's a good fit for you. That's definitely an advantage that I see here at Patriot Conceptions that I have not seen in most agencies.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, thanks for the compliment, Dr. Lan. And Ryan, I'm gonna check our other channel, because we are live streaming this through YouTube and Facebook, to see if they have a question on other platform. So one of the viewers on YouTube, he's asking, the different, we heard about the frozen egg and the fresh egg that you introduced. Is there any when it comes to success rate, is there a significant differences, or can you lay out the pros and cons of each, frozen egg versus fresh?
So the first thing I would say is that if you are planning to have multiple children, then you likely would like to use a fresh egg, because if you are using a fresh egg from a donor, you're probably getting all of her eggs. And a typical egg donor is going to give you somewhere between, I don't know, 15 to 30 eggs. Whereas if you're purchasing frozen eggs, you're going to be purchasing in groups of 6. And you can purchase many groups of 6, but by the time you've done that, it becomes no longer cost effective, right? 6 eggs is $17,000, 30 eggs is maybe $25,000. You may as well get as many as you can. And keeping in mind that 6 eggs results in a single live pregnancy, it's not like you're going to get 6 babies out of 6 eggs. So one thing to think about is how many children you're thinking about in your family building. In terms of the quality of outcomes, that is wholly dependent on who froze the eggs and what your clinic knows about the relationship between their lab and the lab that froze the eggs. So we are very particular about which egg banks we will work with, because we know whom we have seen good quality results from, and we know who we just are not going to get good quality results from. And so I think that is a really critically important conversation to have with your provider before you pick your donor. If you know you want frozen eggs, then talk to your clinic about which egg banks they have worked well with. And if they're not willing to tell you that, that gives me some pause, because there is a lot of variability between the outcomes that we see from different egg banks.
I see.
Those are the two biggest things, right? How many kids you want and making sure that your clinic is going to be in line with the egg bank. If they are, then you should see no difference whether you use frozen eggs or fresh eggs. And we see the same outcomes.
Same outcome. Okay, that's good. And I think more customer from okay, I think we have a customer typing their questions on the screen. Let me check. Let's check on the Facebook and other outlets to see if there's more questions. If we have more time to spare. Okay. And okay, another question that they have, I think. Facebook. Okay, Dr. Lang, I think this is one for you. So this is from one of the Facebook group that we live stream to. They're asking, what's the approximate cost? It's more of a what's the cost of IVF and land fertility if they decide to to use both donors and that would include both the donor and the surrogate cycles.
Yeah, so it does still depend on how you get there. If you're using your own, and you're saying donor eggs versus donor sperm, I'm assuming. If you're using donor eggs in our egg bank, it can be as low as $25,000 to include embryo biopsy, as well as the frozen eggs themselves, as well as the IVF process and the transfer. It can be as high as $50,000 if you use a fresh egg donor and that donor compensation is $15,000, right? So you can think about it being 25 and even slightly less than that if you're really using the most efficient ways of getting pregnant. So eggs that are already in an egg bank that's on our site, maybe doing embryo biopsy, but not necessarily using 12 or 14 eggs, right? Or it could be as expensive as $50,000 if you're picking a third-time egg donor from an agency that has a high agency fee or a high compensation to the donor. We work hard to make sure that part of your journey with us involves a financial consultation with our financial person who will explain to you each of those options. And I will explain to you what different choices are based on what seems feasible for you to do and what's really important for you to do. I think the short answer is there's a way for this to work for everyone. And sometimes it means we have to think about things in a more creative way than I think folks have done in the past. But I do think both Bai and I are pretty committed to minimizing expense for people.
All right, thanks, Dr. Lam, for answering that question. And another one from Facebook group that they were asking is that what are the insurance options for for the IVF? Like, can they use their existing insurance, or is there any other insurance product available for
So if
IVF?
you have to pay for an insurance product for your fertility, it'll be cheaper just to pay for the fertility, right? If you have insurance that has fertility coverage, then we will use your insurance for what it covers in most cases. The reason I think you need to specifically have your own insurance vetted, and that's one of the things our team does, is because very, very few insurances cover third-party reproduction. And so because of that, the very things we're talking about are generally not covered by insurance. That there are exceptions to every rule, but most of the time, gestational surrogacy is not a covered benefit. Most of the time, using an egg donor is not a covered benefit. I have seen one policy recently that covers frozen eggs specifically, but would not cover any element of the surrogacy, and that was at a very good Bay Area tech company policy. But usually insurance just doesn't cover this stuff. Even in state mandated states, across the United States that have to cover fertility, it usually covers fertility of the partners, but not if there's a third party involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially it's good that you mentioned that, and also I guess, and it's more of a question for me, Dr. Lang, is like from all the Bay Area, the big tech company like Facebook, Google, they started to offer like they started to offer reimbursement for surrogacy. Have you seen any of the patient that have that benefits and how it works?
Well, so if it's reimbursement for surrogacy, we're not going to see that because that doesn't come through our office. That would be something that what that means is that the patient has to pay it up front, and there's some amount of reimbursement on the back end. So we worked with Progeny for many years, and unfortunately, we just found that they were not a good fit for our model of care. Because of how they pay out and timelines and so forth. But I think the idea behind Progeny, I want to be very clear about this. I think the idea behind people having coverage for their fertility is a really important one. I think that there are some really great programs that are doing that work, like Carrot, which is another one, CARROT. There are companies that have Carrot, and what Carrot does is it allots a certain amount of money for patients to use for fertility services. It's much more non-specific. So to your point, it might offer reimbursement for something like surrogacy. But again, I've not seen one that's comprehensive that covers all services. And in those settings, the patient still has to put out the dollars and cents up front. And now they have to figure out how long it will be until they're reimbursed by, Carrot or whatever other, system their company has in place. So third party is still tricky around insurance and reimbursement. We haven't seen really great strides made in that space. And frankly, most of the insurance companies just don't feel like they need to touch it. And so they don't.
Awesome. And one of the other questions, I think it might be for both of us. So they were asking, like, I think for one of the international groups on the Facebook, they were asking if we have multilingual spoken staff on site to assist them in terms of interpreting and translating interpreting our communication and translating the documents. So at Petrie Conception we do have Mandarin, Italian, French, and Spanish speakers. As our full-time employees, so we're capable of doing that. So Dr. Lang, can you tell the community like what type of languages?
Yeah, we've had a full Mandarin team for quite a while. So Mandarin is the biggest language because that was the biggest population of patients we were seeing. We've also worked extensively with Spanish speakers, both from Mexico and from Spain, quite frankly. So we've done a fair amount of international work, and then we pull in as we need. So if we have a patient that requires a certain language, we pull in a translator to ensure that work gets done. We do not believe in trying to work with people who are not clearly understanding every element of their care, and we will make sure that there are translation services available. But on staff, it's Spanish and Mandarin.
Awesome. And another question. This is the same guest as the following. As an international patient, are they required to, put a deposit, or they do like I think it's more for IVF clinic, Dr. Lang, is that do they pay everything up front, or do they pay a deposit and to make installment payments afterwards? So how it works in terms of making payments to the IVF clinics?
Yeah, so we have the same process for our international patients as we do for our domestic patients, which is that there's a consultation appointment for which there's a payment. There is, once somebody decides, after having then consulted with me, consulted with the finance team, and found the parties that would be, involved, there's a deposit for their IVF cycle, and then the balance is due at the time that they start their IVF cycle. So that process is the same whether you are working with us because you live down the street or whether you're working with us from China. I think what is different, what we've found to be more challenging in recent years/months, is the movement of funds across countries. So we've worked with folks from the Ukraine, we've worked with folks from Spain, we've worked with folks from China, France, where am I missing? I mean, I'm missing some, but we've worked across the globe. And, generally speaking, the only issues that we've ever come across is, the wiring of funds. And that's gotten a little trickier, I'm sure, you've experienced this, particularly between China and the United States, but
Absolutely.
It seems to be things that we can work around. We've never had to turn a client away because we couldn't figure out a way to make that work.
Okay. Absolutely, yeah. Transferring of the fund, especially when it comes to China, there's there's a outflow control imposed on on how much of money that you can wire to
Correct.
basically anywhere, not just the United States. Yeah, it's definitely create a lot of challenges. And our customer normally they get very creative, but I really don't want to tap into that topic because kind of
It's a whole nother lecture.
it is. Okay. I think this is from all our webinar
I
participants.
think
So is there any?
Yeah. So how long may it take for international customers to process all these things? I mean, I think that the biggest thing that it takes international customers time to process is
Mhm.
if they have a reason to travel to the United States.
Mhm.
So everything else that we're talking about, literally everything else can be done virtually, through emails, through phone calls, chats. We're very well versed in that, as is Vi's team. I know they are. But for example, if you are a male partner and we are using your sperm, you almost always, with the exception of our colleagues that are in Hong Kong, you almost always have to physically come to the United States to give us a sperm specimen. So right now, that's going to be your biggest challenge, getting to the United States to give us a sperm specimen, and that's an FDA requirement if you're using a surrogate. But short of that, everything else we're discussing can occur virtually on our side. Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We still right now we still deal with a customer that pre-pandemic. So pretty much they left the embryos here. They do the match meeting via Zoom call, and pretty much we did build our own communication platform where they can send instant messages to each other,
Right.
so pretty much we've seen that it worked pretty well now. So pretty much every time surrogate go to an appointment, they would she would normally do a live stream or live streaming or to take photos and videos, send it to the intended parents. So yeah, so pretty much it's the same case here. Everything virtuality.
I think the key about international care is that you need to be working with teams of people that have done international care. It's not that complex. I mean, I know Vi knows this. I spent most of last year traveling back and forth between Hong Kong, China, and Saipan to work with making sure we had good establishments between our Chinese community and patients and our American community and services. And so I think that we've got that figured out, right? I have colleagues that do the same with Spain and Italy and France. And so I think that stuff has been figured out. It should not take you longer, Victor, to do this work just because you are someplace other than the US.
Absolutely. I think that concludes our Q&A. I don't see any, unless we have. Let me just double check our Facebook and YouTube streaming. Right now, there's no other. There's no more questions. But thanks so much for joining us, Dr. Lan.
Thank you for having me. This was wonderful.
Information and yeah, so any customer, if you like to get in touch with us, we did a couple call to actions. But if you like to get in touch with Dr. Lan for any initial consultation, you can go to her website, lanfertilityinstitute.com. And you know what? Let me add the web link to the webinar just so they can go there. Just so can to make sure that they have the URL. Okay. All right. Yeah, if you like to schedule, if you like to learn more about Dr. Lan's practice, and schedule an initial appointment, to make a phone call, all the phone numbers and all the contact information. If you go to your screen and click on learn more, you can go to Dr. Lan's website to learn more about her practice and schedule initial consultation. Also, her social media profile, our social media profile. You go to her, it's a couple different ones. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and all that good social media platforms. And thanks again for all the guests, for all the and also the ones on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks so much for attending this webinar. I hope everybody enjoying their Thursday. It's almost Friday, and And yeah, this concludes our webinar.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks.